Your landlord texts you at 8 p.m. on a Sunday. Rent's going up next month. Market rate. Nothing personal. You stare at the message for a long time before you type back, "Understood." You don't tell him the real reason you're not fighting it. You own the building next door. Not a metaphor. An actual deed. An actual mortgage in your name. A handful of units rented out to people who have no idea the guy in 4B with the 10-year-old Civic is the same guy collecting their rent through a property manager they've never met in person. Your own landlord doesn't know either. You've lived in his building for 6 years. He thinks you're just a tenant who pays on time. This is the story of why you rent on purpose and what it cost you to keep that a secret from everyone who ever asked why you don't just buy a place already. Rewind. You're 26. Everyone your age is either buying or apologizing for not buying yet. You run the math one night at a coffee shop, embarrassingly on a napkin, and the gap between what you'd pay to own the place you live in versus what you pay to rent it comes out to almost $1,000 a month. Everyone around you treats that gap like it's supposed to disappear into a mortgage because that's just what adults do next. You look at it and think, what if it went somewhere else instead? Your coworker Danny buys that year. Small condo, barely any money down, closing costs that hollow out his savings account down to nothing. He posts a photo of the keys in his hand outside the building, grinning like the picture is the whole point, which for him, in that moment, it kind of is. You react to the post, genuinely happy for him. You don't mention that you just signed for a duplex 2 towns over, a place you will never live in, with 2 units and 2 separate families about to start paying you rent instead of the other way around. You're 27. The first rent checks land, and after the mortgage, taxes, and insurance on the place clear out, there's a little left over every month. Not a fortune. Barely a nice dinner out. But it's the first time in your life money has shown up without you trading hours for it, and something about that quietly rearranges how you think about your own paycheck. You still rent your 1 bedroom. Your mother asks at Thanksgiving why you're still throwing money away instead of buying something of your own. You say you're saving up. That's true. You just don't say what you're actually saving toward, or that you already own a property generating income while she asks the question. Danny, meanwhile, gets hit with a special assessment that winter, an unexpected bill from his condo association to cover a roof repair nobody budgeted for. The kind of letter that shows up once and rearranges your whole month. He didn't see it coming, because nobody warns you about those until you're the one holding the envelope. You don't gloat, and you genuinely mean that. You just quietly notice that owning the place you sleep in comes with bills that show up uninvited, and owning places you don't live in comes with bills you priced in from day one, because you ran the numbers before you ever signed anything, not after. A guy in your own building figures out somehow that you own property. County records, maybe, or a mutual friend. You never fully learn how. He starts talking to you differently in the elevator, half impressed, half something else you can't quite name. 2 weeks later, he asks you to look at a listing he found, clearly overpriced, clearly sold to him by an agent who smelled an easy commission from a block away. You tell him gently that the numbers don't work. He doesn't want to hear the version of this where you spend years running numbers before signing anything. He wants the shortcut. He buys the place anyway, 6 months later, against everything you showed him. If any of this is landing for you the way that napkin math landed for you back at 26, hit like now. It's the only reason this reaches the next person sitting exactly where you were. You're 30. A third property now, and the rent on your own apartment goes up again. The same kind of text you'll get years later, word for word. You pay it without a fight, because the gap still favors you. That gap, quietly redirected every month instead of poured into a mortgage on the place you live, is the entire reason you're sitting where you're sitting. Nobody at your job knows any of this. Nobody in your building does either. The property manager who handles your tenants has never once met you in person. Danny calls you that year, not to brag, just to talk, the way old coworkers do when they haven't spoken in a while. He mentions, almost in passing, that the condo isn't quite what he thought it'd be. The mortgage, the assessments, a job offer in another city he can't easily take because selling the place would barely cover what he still owes on it, plus the agent's cut. He laughs it off on the phone, but there's a tiredness under the laugh you recognize. The sound of someone starting to suspect they signed up for something heavier than they understood at the time. You don't say anything about your own situation. There's nothing to gain from it, and Danny isn't someone you'd ever want to make feel small. Then comes the year it almost breaks you. One of your tenants, a family in the duplex, loses a job and stops paying. 3 months behind before you fully register what's happening. You've never had to think seriously about eviction before, and you sit with the decision for 2 weeks, because these are people, not spreadsheet rows, and the version of you that wanted this to feel purely mathematical finds out it never fully does. You work out a payment plan instead, eating real money for a couple of months so a family with 2 kids doesn't end up somewhere worse in the middle of winter. It costs you more than you'd like to admit. It's the first time the whole thing feels less like a clever secret and more like a responsibility you didn't fully understand the weight of when you signed up for it. Months later, the mother from that family stops by your property manager's office just to say thank you in person, not knowing she's thanking the name on a deed she's never seen. Your property manager mentions it to you almost as an aside in an email. You read that message twice. It's the closest thing to recognition you've gotten for any of it in years, and the person saying it doesn't even know your name. Danny sells the condo not long after, relocating for that job he finally decides to take anyway, and walks away with barely more than he put in 6 years earlier once everything's accounted for. He's not upset with you. He doesn't even think to compare notes, because he still has no idea what you quietly built 2 towns over while he was posting keys in his hand. That same year, your original landlord sends the same text he always sends. Market rate adjustment, nothing personal. You type back, understood, same as always. You don't tell him what closed that same week. There was never a rivalry here. He doesn't know he's in one. A few years on, the combined income from everything you own comes in every month, whether or not you get out of bed that day. You still rent your own apartment. You've never once bought the place you actually sleep in, and at this point you probably never will, because the math still doesn't favor it where you live, and you stopped needing the ownership to mean something emotionally a long time ago. Your family still asks, less often now, but they ask. Your mother, at a birthday dinner, says something about how you must be doing okay for yourself, gesturing vaguely at nothing in particular, the way people do when they suspect there's a number they're not being told. You say you're doing fine. You don't show her the portal. It isn't shame. It's that the moment people know the number, they stop asking how you are and start asking what you can do for them. And you watched that happen to exactly one person you know who told everyone at once. Here's the part that actually matters more than any figure in this story. You were never against owning a home. You were against owning the wrong asset, for the wrong reason, at the wrong time, just because everyone around you treated it as the obvious next step instead of a decision that needed its own math. Renting where you live was never the failure people assumed it was. It was the thing that quietly freed up the money that eventually became something bigger than the one mortgage you'd have needed a decade to make sense of. Your landlord still doesn't know. He's not going to find out from you. Somewhere in his building right now, in a unit that isn't yours, there's a tenant who has no idea what the person next door actually owns. Maybe you're the one still deciding whether renting on purpose even makes sense for you. Or maybe you already did the math tonight and didn't like what it told you. Either way, subscribe if you want to see exactly where that gap can take you. The next one goes further than you'd expect.